All right, welcome to Chapter 21, Lecture Part 3, Spirituality and Abstraction. In this lecture, I will try to explain why abstraction is particularly suitable for representing spiritual matters. Abstract art is an ideal vehicle for communicating spiritual realities for several reasons. It removes viewers from the world they think they know and allows them to focus their contemplation on symbols, the experience of a work, or its meditative characters. Kandinsky said, "The spirit is often concealed within matter to such an extent that few people are generally capable of perceiving it." Abstraction allows for us to exclusively focus on the experiential or conceptual realms, which are primarily concerns of the spiritual. However, just because abstraction reveals something beyond the physical realm does not mean one needs to reject ideas of the material world. Artists like Kandinsky, Mondrian, Fujimura, or Rothko may be working with a clear understanding that it's just paint on canvas, but their art, no matter how spiritual, remains firmly in the realm of a personal aesthetic experience. Therefore, there is an equal emphasis placed on the visual experience as transcendent significance, depending upon the individual. So basically what I'm saying here is that it's up to the individual to decide if a painting inspires them to have some sort of spiritual reaction or meditative moment. Here we're looking at a work by an artist that wasn't covered in your textbook, Helma af Klint. She's a Swedish artist that was painting in the early 20th century, so in the early 1900s. And here we're looking at one of her paintings. And I want to teach you a little bit about her because I feel that she might have actually been the first painter to work in this realm of spirituality and abstraction. So she was born in 1862 and died in 1944, and her work was never publicly seen until 1986. Most of her life she made paintings that were commissioned, and so they were portraits and landscapes, things that people specifically asked her to create with her own interpretation. However, in secret, she was making these incredibly large, as you can see, abstract paintings that her and a collection of her friends, through the writings that were found, seemed to think that some sort of spiritual world was communicating to them to then make these bodies of art. So I want you to take a few minutes to watch this 5-minute video to learn more about this amazing artist that I wish was talked more about. But sometimes women artists don't get the same amount of attention that their male counterparts get. Here's a couple more paintings by her, and I'm hoping that you watch the video so you can recognize not only is the content of the work abstract, it is incredibly organic, but also kind of like from another world. It has this very otherworldly feel. And then the way that she talks about her use of color and the symbolism behind her use of color, I think is also incredibly fascinating. An artist that's most famous for this idea of spirituality and abstraction within painting specifically is Wisely Kandinsky, and this is one of his paintings from 1913. So even though they were working at a similar time, Kandinsky was in Russia and Klint was in Switzerland. So they might not have ever really crossed paths, but it's hard to say. I don't know. Maybe they did, and that hasn't been exposed yet in some sort of article or exhibition. However, Kandinsky was one of the first artists to really write about these concepts. And so he was a Russian painter and art theorist. By being an art theorist meant that he published a lot of articles talking about his ideas behind the paintings that he's making. And he was really a pioneer and is known for his abstract modern art. He was really interested in the interaction of color and form to create an aesthetic experience that engaged the sight, sound, and emotions of the public. He believed that total abstraction offered the possibility for profound, transcendental expression, and that copying from nature only interfered with this process. So he wasn't interested in making a traditional landscape. He was really interested in kind of creating this visual world that came from inside of his brain, inside of his own connection to shape and form and his creative process. He was highly inspired to create art that communicated a universal sense of spirituality. He innovated a pictorial language that only loosely related to the outside world, but expressed volumes about the artist's inner experience. His visual vocabulary developed through 3 phases, shifting from his early representational canvases and the divine symbols to his raptures and operatic compositions to his late geometric and biomorphic flat panels of color. So Kandinsky has had a big influence on some of the other painters that we've been studying. And here's a couple more paintings by Kandinsky, and also a website if you want to look at some of the other famous painters that some of them we've talked about, some of them we haven't, but it's a good website that not only has the artwork, but also has the physical properties as well, which I think can sometimes be very informative when you get to learn about the size and the pigment. Here we have oil on canvas. So with his work, he was really working with this idea of a religious experience and wrote quite a bit about these ideas of making a sacred space within the paintings for the viewers to feel like they've entered a church, or like we were talking about in lecture 2, having some sort of a transcendent moment by being in the presence of this painting. And so there was really a time to reflect on some sort of spiritual connection and to hopefully have some sort of enlightenment. That was really his overall concept and his intentions with these paintings. And at the time, we can look at them and just kind of relate them to abstract modern art that you would see at SF MoMA that could have been made in the last 25 years. But when he was making these, he really was doing something that was unheard of, that shook the public quite a bit with his words and ideas. And like we've already studied, Mark Rothko, he's another painter who not only made work that was supposed to make you feel something, and that he was removing all of the connections to visual symbols that we understand and trying to eliminate anything that was recognizable. He actually does have a chapel, and you can go there, and there's all sorts of different things happening in his chapel, from meditative gatherings to people that are very interested in talking about diversity and the collective experience. And so I found this video that I would encourage you to watch. It's about 6 minutes, and it talks about all the different concepts that are sort of infused into the ideas of the Rothko Chapel. And then finally, I just wanted you to, in this lecture, sort of thinking about why is abstraction particularly suitable for representing spiritual matters, which was kind of what we started off talking about. And, you know, for me, the large abstract paintings by the different artists that I just introduced you to really have the power to envelop the viewer. I mean, they're huge paintings. And so, you know, it enables you to really have kind of like as if you had gone into a sacred space, because the physicality in relationship to these large paintings has such an impact on the viewer. So I hope that you enjoyed this lecture, and have a good week. Thank you.